My husband stood in our marble foyer, suitcase in hand, screaming that I'd never survive without him, that no woman walks away from a $1 billion marriage. He actually laughed when I handed him the divorce papers. 3 months later, he wasn't laughing anymore. Let me tell you what happened. My name is Angela Morrison, and for 8 years, I was married to Trevor Morrison, a tech billionaire worth more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. From the outside, my life looked perfect. Mansion in the hills, closets full of designer clothes, vacations in places you need a passport and a private jet to reach. But here's what nobody tells you about being married to a man who thinks his money makes him untouchable. You stop being a wife and become a possession, another expensive thing he owns. And just like his cars and watches, he figured I'd always be there, polished and waiting, no matter how badly he treated me. I'm here today to tell you the story of how I walked away from all of it and what happened when a man who thought he had all the power realized he'd been wrong the entire time. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life or wondered if you'd survive leaving someone who holds all the power, stay with me. Hit that subscribe button because this story is about to show you what happens when a woman stops begging and starts building. I met Trevor when I was 24 years old, working as a financial analyst at an investment firm in the city. I was good at my job, really good. The kind of person who could look at numbers and see patterns other people missed. Trevor came in for a consultation about expanding his tech portfolio, and I was assigned to his account. He was 32 then, already wealthy from smart investments and startups that became household names. He was confident, charismatic, and he listened when I talked about financial strategies like my words actually mattered. That's what got me, honestly. Not the money or the lifestyle, but the way he looked at me like I was the smartest person in the room. We started dating 2 weeks after that first meeting. 3 months later, we were engaged. 6 months after that, we were married in a wedding that cost more than most people's houses, with 300 guests and flowers flown in from Ecuador. Those first 2 years were genuinely happy. I wasn't just his wife, I was his partner. He'd run business decisions by me, and my financial insights helped him double his wealth in 18 months. I felt valued, needed, like we were building an empire together. I should have known it was too good to last. But when you're happy, you don't look for problems. You just enjoy the moment and hope it never ends. Year 3 is when everything changed. Trevor started coming home later, sometimes not until 2 or 3 in the morning. When I asked where he'd been, he'd get defensive, say I was being controlling, that he was building businesses and I should be grateful instead of questioning him. Then came the night I found lipstick on his collar, the kind of bright red I'd never wear in my life. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to lie convincingly. He just shrugged and said, "It happened. What do you want me to do about it?" Like he'd spilled wine on the carpet instead of breaking our marriage vows. I was devastated. I cried for days, barely ate, couldn't sleep. And you know what he did? He bought me a diamond bracelet and told me to stop being dramatic. Said every successful man makes mistakes, and I lived in a mansion. So what was I really complaining about? I can't explain the shame I felt in that moment, not just because of what he did, but because part of me actually considered whether he was right, whether I was overreacting, whether this was just what marriage looked like when you reached a certain tax bracket. My mother didn't help. When I called her crying, she said, "Angela, men make mistakes. Don't throw away your security over one night." So I stayed. I convinced myself it was a one-time thing, that he'd learned his lesson, that we could move past it. I was so incredibly wrong. The affairs didn't stop. They multiplied. His assistant, a model he met at a charity gala, women at business conferences whose names I never learned. Trevor wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. He'd take calls late at night in our bedroom, not even bothering to leave the room, laughing with whoever was on the other end, while I pretended to be asleep. I'd find receipts for hotel rooms and jewelry I never received. His car constantly smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was watching our friends and social circle pretend they didn't notice. These women I had lunch with, who came to our dinner parties, who smiled in my face, they all knew. They'd give me these pitying looks, but nobody said anything because Trevor was too wealthy, too connected, too important to confront. I threw myself into charity work to cope, spent my days running a nonprofit for women's education, because at least there, I felt like I mattered. But at home, I was disappearing. Trevor's cruelty grew with each affair. He'd call me ungrateful, boring, said I was lucky any man wanted to marry me, let alone someone like him. He started comparing me to his mistresses. At least Nicole doesn't nag me about where I've been, he'd say, like I was the problem for caring that my husband was cheating. The final straw came on what should have been our 8th anniversary. I'd planned a quiet dinner at home, nothing dramatic, just us reconnecting. Then I overheard Trevor on the phone in his office, telling someone named Nicole that she should come to our anniversary party as his business associate so they could sneak away together. He was laughing about it, actually laughing, like humiliating me was entertainment. That night, after he'd gone to sleep, I went through his laptop. He didn't even have a password anymore. That's how little he feared me leaving. What I found broke something in me, but not in the way you'd think. There were messages between him and Nicole going back months, hundreds of them. But it wasn't the affair that destroyed me. It was what he said about me. He called me simple, boring, said I was nothing without his money, told her I'd never leave because I needed him too much, that I was too scared of being poor to ever walk away. He was mocking me, reducing 8 years of marriage to a punchline for his mistress. And something inside me just snapped, not into anger or tears, but into absolute clarity. I realized I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was done. Done begging for respect. Done accepting crumbs. Done being the joke in my own marriage. I wasn't afraid of poverty. I was afraid I'd wasted 8 years on someone who never valued me. The next morning, I didn't confront Trevor. I'd learned that lesson already. Confrontation gave him power, a chance to manipulate and gaslight and make promises he'd never keep. Instead, I called Diane Okoro, my old mentor from my financial analyst days, who was now a successful investment banker. I told her everything, and she said something that changed my life. She said, "Angela, don't leave angry. Leave prepared." So I started planning. I called a divorce lawyer named Patricia Indlovu, a woman known for protecting wives in high-asset divorces from men who tried to leave them with nothing. Patricia was sharp, thorough, and she didn't sugarcoat anything. She told me this would be ugly, that Trevor would fight dirty, but that I had more power than I realized. See, I still had access to all our financial documents from the years I'd helped build his businesses. So I started documenting everything. I took photos, downloaded bank records, saved messages, and the more I dug, the more I found. Trevor had been hiding money in offshore accounts, skirting tax laws, doing deals that weren't exactly legal. My financial training kicked in, and suddenly I wasn't a heartbroken wife anymore. I was an analyst again, gathering data, building a case. Patricia brought in forensic accountants who found even more. Turns out, my contributions to his business entitled me to significant assets, way more than Trevor would ever voluntarily give. While I was building my case, I was also rebuilding my life. I reached out to my old professional network, the colleagues I'd left behind when I became Mrs. Trevor Morrison. One of them, Leonard Badu, was now running a growing startup and needed a chief financial officer. When we met for coffee, he offered me the position on the spot, said he'd always respected my financial mind and would be lucky to have me. I accepted with a start date in 3 months. That gave me time to finalize the divorce before starting fresh. I leased a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just 2 bedrooms with decent light and space that was mine. I quietly moved money to a separate account, only what was legally mine, nothing that would raise alarms. I bought new clothes for my new job, professional outfits that made me feel competent instead of decorative. And through it all, Trevor noticed nothing. He was so convinced I'd never leave, so secure in his power over me, that he didn't see me planning my escape right under his nose. He'd come home late, sometimes with lipstick still on his collar, and I'd just smile and ask about his day like nothing was wrong. Inside, I was counting down. 3 months became 2 months, became 2 weeks. I told no one, except Diane and Patricia. Not my mother, not my friends, nobody who might accidentally let it slip. I served Trevor the divorce papers on a Tuesday morning in late September. He was drinking coffee in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone, probably texting Nicole. I walked in, placed the papers in front of him, and said, "I'm divorcing you. You'll need to get a lawyer." You should have seen his face. First confusion, like he couldn't process what was happening. Then shock, genuine disbelief that I was actually doing this. Then rage, his face turning red. As he stood up so fast, his chair fell backwards. He screamed, called me ungrateful, stupid, delusional. Then, and this is the part I'll never forget, he started laughing, actually laughing, doubled over like I'd told the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "You," he said, gasping for air between laughs. "Leave me? Angela, you don't even know how to survive without my credit cards. You've never paid a bill in your life. You'll come crawling back in a month, and I'm not sure I'll take you back." I stayed perfectly calm. I'd practiced this moment in my head 100 times. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I guess we'll find out." He threatened me then, said he'd leave me with nothing, drag me through court until I had no choice but to beg him for mercy. I just picked up my purse and walked toward the door. As I reached it, I turned back and said, "Too late, Trevor. I already have everything that matters." The next 3 months were brutal. Trevor hired the most aggressive lawyers he could find, men who specialized in destroying wives in divorce court. They tried every tactic, delaying proceedings, questioning my contributions to the marriage, painting me as a gold digger who married him for money. Trevor expected me to crack when money got tight, when I had to actually budget and pay my own bills. But I was working now, living in my modest apartment, taking the bus sometimes instead of calling a driver. And I was genuinely happy, happier than I'd been in years, sleeping through the night, waking up without that knot of anxiety in my stomach, not wondering where my husband was or who he was with. Meanwhile, Trevor's lawyers discovered all the documentation I'd gathered. Every offshore account, every hidden asset, every questionable business deal. Patricia's forensic accountants presented it all in court, and suddenly Trevor was the one with problems. Tax authorities started asking questions. Business partners got nervous about the legal implications. His perfect image started cracking. The man who'd built his reputation on being a genius investor was now being investigated for financial crimes. And then, Nicole left him. Turns out when the money and status got complicated, her love disappeared real quick. She released a statement through her publicist about how she'd been misled about the nature of his marriage, like she hadn't known exactly what she was doing the whole time. Trevor started unraveling. Other business partners distanced themselves because association with him had become risky. Deals fell through. Investors pulled out. His empire, the one we'd built together, was crumbling. And that's when he tried to come back. It started with flowers delivered to my apartment, enormous bouquets with cards that said things like, "I miss you," and "We can fix this." I threw them away. Then emails, long rambling messages about how he'd made mistakes, but we'd built something together. And didn't that mean anything? I deleted them without responding. Finally, he showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning. I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity got the better of me. He looked terrible, exhausted, older somehow, like the stress was aging him in real time. He sat on my couch, in my small living room that could fit in his closet, and begged, actually begged, said he was sorry, that he'd been stupid, that he'd taken me for granted, that he wanted to work it out, go to counseling, start over. He even cried, which I'd never seen him do in 8 years of marriage. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a calm certainty that this man no longer had any power over me. I let him finish. Then I said, "Trevor, you didn't throw away our marriage with one mistake. You threw it away every single time. You chose someone else. Every lie, every affair, every moment you made me feel worthless." I continued, "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. You thought I'd never leave because you confused my love with dependence. You thought providing money meant you could do anything, treat me however you wanted, humiliate me publicly and privately, and I'd just accept it because I was scared of losing the lifestyle. But you were wrong. I'm not the same woman you married. Actually, that's not true. I am the same woman. I'm the financial analyst who built strategies that doubled your wealth. I'm the woman who ran a successful nonprofit while you were out cheating. I was always capable, is always strong. I just forgot for a while because you convinced me my value was tied to being your wife." He tried to argue, to promise change, but I stood up and walked to the door. "I need you to leave now," I said. "Our lawyers will handle the rest." He looked at me with something that might have been respect, might have been regret, probably both. "You really mean this," he said, like he was finally understanding. "I do," I answered. "I hope you find whatever you were looking for in all those other women. I hope it was worth it." He left, and I closed the door behind him, stood there for a minute, waiting to feel sad or angry or something dramatic. But I just felt light, free, like I'd been carrying a weight for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The divorce finalized 3 weeks later. I got a substantial settlement, more than Trevor wanted to give, but less than I probably deserved. But it was enough. More importantly, I got my freedom back. I got to remember who I was before I became someone's wife, before I let a man define my worth. Trevor's empire never fully recovered. Turns out my financial mind had been more crucial to his success than either of us realized. He's still wealthy, probably always will be, but he's not the untouchable billionaire anymore. He's just another rich man who destroyed his own life through arrogance and entitlement. I saw him 6 months after the divorce at a business conference for my new company. Leonard's startup had grown significantly, and my strategies were a big part of that success. I was giving a presentation on sustainable investment models when I spotted Trevor in the audience. He looked diminished somehow, older and tired. After my presentation, he approached me in the networking area. "Angela," he said, "you look good. Happy?" I smiled because it was true. "I am," I said simply. He nodded, like he was processing something difficult. "Do you ever think about what we had?" he asked. I considered the question honestly, not trying to hurt him, but not sugarcoating either. "I think about who I was," I finally answered. "And I'm grateful she finally left." His face did something complicated, pain mixed with understanding. I didn't wait for his response. I just walked away, toward my colleagues, toward my new life. Here's what I learned from all of this. Trevor didn't think I'd leave because he confused my love with dependence, my commitment with desperation. He thought that because he provided financial security, he could do anything. Cheat, lie, humiliate, disrespect. And I'd just take it because I needed him. He was wrong about so many things, but mostly he was wrong about me. I wasn't afraid of being without him. I was afraid of admitting I'd stayed too long with someone who didn't value me. Walking away wasn't the hard part. The hard part was accepting that I'd wasted 8 years waiting for him to become the man he'd pretended to be in the beginning. If I could tell my younger self anything, it would be this. Your worth isn't tied to anyone's bank account, not even your own. It's in how you value yourself, how you refuse to accept less than you deserve, how you walk away when staying means losing yourself. Was it easy? Absolutely not. I had scary moments, lonely nights, times when I doubted whether I'd made the right choice. But choosing myself was the best decision I ever made. If you're in a situation where someone treats your presence as guaranteed and your pain as an inconvenience, please hear me. You deserve better. And better starts with believing you can survive without them. Because you can. I'm living proof. You're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and worthy of so much more than settling.